And good morning, One Heart, One Mind Center for Spiritual Living.
Good.
So good to be here with you all. And let's start out with a little Daniel Namaud this morning. We're just going to do computer sound. And I thought this would be a nice way to begin.
Oh, yeah.
Little Daniel.
God, you are every mountain. God, you are every ocean. God, you are every canyon, every inch of earth and sky. God, you are every morning. God, you are every midnight. God, you are every moment, every second of my life. Everything I see, everything I do, everything I am is you. Everything above, everything below, everything I know is you. God, you are every sunrise. God, you are every moon glow. God, you are every star shine, every inch of earth and sky. God, you are every springtime. God, you are every snowfall. God, you are every season, every second of my life. Everything I see, everything I do, everything I am is you. Everything above, everything below, everything I know is you. 'Cause you are the very breath I breathe, and your perfect love created me. Everything I see, everything I do, everything I am is you. Everything above, everything below, everything I know is you. Everything I see, everything I do, everything I am is you. Everything above, everything below, everything I know is you. Everything I see, everything I do, everything I am is you. Everything above, everything below, everything I know is you.
Oh, yes, it is. I love that song. That's an oldie but goodie in the New Thought um, centers. Anyway, I just thought that was a good way to kick us off. And our practitioner today is Rob McGregor. And you always have fun stuff to share with us, even when it's just your praying. You always have something good.
Thank you for saying that. I hope I got something good today because my sound system's a little iffy. So we're going to see how
Oh,
we.
we
Um,
can we can hear you just fine right now.
so far, so far, so it's holding
Yeah.
up so far, and we'll see
Okay.
how we're doing. Anyway, Michelle, you may have. I was just noticing the email you sent out, and you may have changed the your talk title.
Did I?
Um, I think so. If the
Living what
one,
you know, right?
what's that?
Living what you know.
Um, well, okay, good enough. That sounds good enough. It sounded different to me. In any event,
Okay.
um, what I'm end up speaking about is exactly that, concentrating on what we know spiritually instead of learning new stuff. Now,
That's exactly what
as
I'm talking about. You're right on
oh,
track.
cool,
That's
that's cool.
exactly it.
I got a different impression from the email, but
Oh
I'm
no.
glad because we'll either be in sync or redundant or something.
It's
Anyway,
okay.
now as said, as I've mentioned probably many times, I tend to be different from most spiritual people. Most people who study the science of mind arrive here because this teaching, it just feels right. They arrive here through feeling. For me, I tend to figure out what is logically impossible. And if only one explanation is left, then that one must be true, at least for me. That is how I was able to come up with big chunks of the science of mind before I ever heard of Ernest Holmes. And it's not that Ernie didn't teach me anything useful. I absolutely got some important puzzle pieces from him. And I respect him as a pioneer because he had everything pretty well figured out long before I started searching. But the question is whether you do your spiritual expansion work by reading the ideas of others or through cold hard logic, is it time to concentrate on what you know rather than perpetually trying to expand? Which is to say, will your enjoyment of your life benefit more as a result of learning new tricks or from being more consistent about applying what you already know? Well, here's what I know. Everything, that is to say, all reality emanates from consciousness. That makes perfect sense to me. The one question for which I currently have no answer is why is there consciousness? The Bible says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Okay, that tracks. So, why is there God? And we attribute certain qualities to God, but why those qualities and not others? I see God as perfect and as totally loving, but why is God loving and not awful? Did we just luck out? And if we did, it's a really good thing because with God, there's no exchanges and no returns. And we know that gratitude is an important practice. We can be grateful for many things. You might be grateful that your Aunt Gertrude's eczema cleared up. But in reality, all gratitude boils down to one single gratitude. Ain't God great? Okay, back to the question at hand. Is it time to concentrate on practicing what we know rather than learning new things? For me, no. There are still important questions I want answers to. All of my new discoveries come from an internal process, and the pattern is the more I figure out, the better my life becomes, the more I feel good. For you, it's an open question. Do you want to learn new tricks, or would your time be better spent on doubling down on what you already know? And apparently, that is what Michelle's talk is about. So she can help you with that one. Regardless, when I can, I want to keep showing up at our Tuesday evening book club. It's not that I'm going to learn something there that's going to change my life. For me, it's about the camaraderie because in the outside world, I would be considered completely and certifiably weird. In our group, I'm only mostly weird. And trust me, for me, that's a big, 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 big improvement. And ain't God great? Let's pray. So, right now, I am falling back into the love of God, into the warm embrace of God. And I know that all of us can experience that goodness right now. For we are feeling the oneness that we are with the entire universe. We are knowing the truth that we are one with the universe. And what's really grand about this is that there is a power for good in the universe, and we can use it. And what's really remarkable is that we can get better and better and better at using it to make our lives exactly what we wish to experience. And that is just delightful. I am so grateful to be in this position that I can declare the universal good of all that is, that I can feel it moment by moment by moment. Thank you, God. Thank you for this service. Thank you for this opportunity to be with friends who also can just celebrate how wonderful, how lucky we are to have this wonderful life surrounded by all that is good, all that is God, and know that our future is guaranteed to be even better than it is now, and it will be better than that and better than that, because we just keep improving the way we approach and the way we see God. Thank you, God. Thank you for this. Thank you for what Michelle is about to impart, because I know it's going to be grand. And I am so grateful for the whole experience of this service, and that everybody feels good about this. Thank you, God. I release my word, and together we say, and so it is. And with any luck, Michelle is going to have, there it is. I trust the quiet unfolding of the divine presence. I welcome the new expression of life moving through me. I say yes to fresh possibilities, new growth, and deeper truth. I am renewed. I am ready, and I walk forward in faith. And so it is.
Oh, that's perfect. Can you hear me? Oh, good. You know, I gotta say, Rob, I have never heard anything from you as far as what you believe that I thought, oh, that is just out there. Most of the things that you say, I go, oh, yeah, yeah, I get that. I can see that. So I don't want you to think that you're, the black sheep of our spiritual community. You are not. So, all right, my friends, I have another, actually, this one is a video. Fingers crossed all is going to go well. And this is from my new favorite person that I shared with you last week, Carrie Newcomer, and it's called Abide, which is really what we're talking about this week, abiding in that presence that we know is there. Looks like it started without me. So there we go.
I will bring a cup of water. Here's the best that I can offer. In the dusk of coming night, there is evidence of light. With the pattering of rain, let us bow as if in grace. Consider all the ways we heal and how a heart can break. Abide with me, where it's breathless and it's empty. Yes, abide with me, and we'll pass the evening gently. Stay awake with me, and we'll listen more intently to something wordless and remaining, sure and ever changing in the quietness of now. Let us ponder the unknown, what is hidden and what's whole, and finally learn to travel at the speed of our own souls. There is a living water, a spirit cutting through, always changing, always making all things new. Breathless and it's empty. Yes, abide with me, and we'll pass the evening gently. Stay awake with me, and we'll listen more intently to to something wordless and remaining, sure and ever changing in the quietness of now. There are things I cannot prove, and still somehow I know it's like a message in a bottle that some unseen hand has thrown. You don't have to be afraid, you don't have to walk alone. I don't know, but I suspect that it will feel like home. With me, where it's breathless and it's empty. Yes, abide with me, and we'll pass the evening gently. Stay away with me, and we'll listen more intently to something wordless and remaining, sure and ever changing in the quietness of now.
Hmm. So that's kind of what we're talking about today, is that abiding in the presence. Oh, so let's take a breath. Let's just take a breath. Just connect with that presence. And as always, I just want to say good morning again to our One Heart, One Mind spiritual family. And um, for all of you that are right here in the Zoom room with me and with all of us in real time, or if you're listening to the replay, you're so welcome in our loving community. And this morning's message is kind of a culmination of the journey we've taken together throughout the month of May. We began with doubt as a doorway, which led us to the natural flow of life as doubt falls away, which led to faith as a spiritual practice. And then we deepened into the state of trust. And this morning, I'd like to bring our attention to how all of these aspects of a spiritual life come together, not as separate pieces and separate teachings, but as an integrated way of living, one that empowers us to live with greater meaning, to live with a greater sense of fulfillment and joy, from moving from understanding of spiritual principle to actually practicing it and then dwelling in it so thoroughly, embodying it so naturally and consistently that it becomes our state of being. And our state of being creates our identity, the identity of who we know ourselves to be. And that's what impresses creative law and demonstrates as our experience. And I listen to a lot of Neville Goddard, and one of the things he says often is that your identity is your destiny. Who you are determines what you experience, and I very much believe that that's true. And like Goddard, who he spoke so eloquently of the inner I am, that powerful affirmation, I am, the I am we believe ourselves to be. So when I talk about Goddard, when I talk about identity and what Goddard says the same thing. He doesn't mean the things that outside of us that define us, right? We know that. We're talking about the self that we occupy in consciousness. And Rob mentioned consciousness. Everything arises from consciousness. It's the state of all being. So, and the state of being that we inhabit consistently within consciousness, becomes who we believe ourselves to be, and it can either be in that peace, love, and wholeness of our oneness with God, or it can be in a belief in lack or limitation or disease or unworthiness or something that's born out of fear. So it's really, who do we believe ourselves to be? And our founder, Ernest Holmes, said it very similarly. He said that we should identify ourselves with the highest within us. And we know the highest within us is the all that is. So living a spiritual life consciously begins with our connection to this presence. Call it what you will, the divine, all that is, the thing itself, as Holmes called it. I tend to call it just the divine presence. And while, and Rob mentioned this too, it's always interesting to have a deep philosophical discussion about the nature of God, but I believe we can go deeper. I'm reminded of, when I wrote it down too, because I didn't want to misquote it. I was reminded as I was putting my Sunday message together of the 91st Psalm in the Old Testament that reads, "He that dwell in the secret place of the Most High shall abide in the shadow of the Almighty." I'm sure the shadow of the Almighty is the experience that expressed from dwelling in that most high place. From a metaphysical perspective, to dwell is to embody a particular state of being. When we dwell in our oneness with God, we hold that high vibration of our wholeness and love and peace and more. And then we live from that place. And Ernest Holmes also put it very much the same. He wrote, "There is a place within us where peace dwells. There is a place in us where wisdom abides. There's a place in us where the infinite forever flows through all avenues of our being." And to me, this is the starting point for pulling all the aspects of a spiritual life together, the beginning of spiritual integration, really. To not only understand that there is this indwelling place within our own consciousness, but to embody it, to feel it as who we are, to dwell here, to align our thoughts and our choices, our relationships, and just our everyday actions with this resonance until it so thoroughly becomes the state of our being, the atmosphere of our being, that it becomes our identity. And then it begins to show up in our daily lives. And really, when you think about it, in very practical ways, and I was thinking of examples, it's that moment when compassion becomes more than just a lovely idea, it becomes the way we speak to each other. And when we trust the divine flow, and it becomes the way we move through even the most uncomfortable moments of uncertainty. When forgiveness becomes something we practice every day rather than build resentments. I tend to go through any resentments that I've come across during the day and just kind of let them go. It's when peace becomes the place that we return to over and over again as we walk through our daily lives. It's that movement from knowledge to embodiment to feel a principle so that we can live it, so that we can be it in the world, show up as it. Several years ago, I think I've actually shared this before, but I want to share it again because it came up for me. A few years ago, I felt like I hit a wall in my spiritual exploration. I realized that I had become this filing cabinet for spiritual ideas and knowledge. All of and one day I was searching for yet another way, another system of thought to learn about, to think about. And I found myself saying, wait a minute, I don't need more knowledge. What I need is a dedicated and committed practice to bring these constant, unchangeable, universal principles and truths alive in my life so I can embody them so that they can become the pattern of my thinking, feeling, my state of being. I needed a movement from what do I need to learn to what am I willing to live? And I'm sure many of you, probably all of you, know what I mean. We've probably all been there at one time or another. We've probably all studied science of mind and other great philosophies and other spiritual traditions, and then said to ourselves, "This is great, but how do I live it? How do I use this as a catalyst for change in my life?" I was trying to think of a story because stories are great teachers. I was trying to think of one that to really illustrate this change from knowledge to embodiment, from practice to presence, where we go from talking about swimming to actually getting wet. And I thought of a scene from the movie Good Will Hunting. You probably all know the movie, it was very famous. You've probably even seen it. You've probably even seen this scene. And it's the scene where Robin Williams and Matt Damon are sitting on a park bench. And Williams, if you don't know the movie, he plays a psychologist who's been asked to counsel Matt Damon, in essence, to keep him out of jail. And Damon plays a deeply troubled 20-year-old genius. I mean, he is a genius. He knows a lot about everything, but only from books, not from actual experience. And Williams says to Damon, "I finally realized that you're just a kid. You don't have the faintest idea what you're talking about." And then he goes on and he says, "You've never been out of Boston, have you?" And Damon replies, "Nope." And Williams says, "So if I ask you about art, you'd probably give me the skinny on every art book ever written. Michelangelo, you probably know a lot about him, his life's work, his political aspirations, him and the Pope, sexual orientation, the works. But you can't tell me what it smells like in the Sistine Chapel. You've never actually stood there and looked up at that beautiful ceiling." And then Robin Williams goes on to ask him about women. He wants to know, "What do you know about them?" he says, and remarking that Damon has probably never actually woken up next to a woman and felt truly happy. And then Williams says, "If I ask you about war, you'd probably throw Shakespeare at me. Once more into the breach, dear friends. But you've never actually been near one, never held your best friend's head in your lap and watch him gasp his last breath." And then Williams goes on to talk about other topics that Damon has no experience with. And finally, he says to Damon, "You're an orphan, right?" And then he asks him, "Do you think I could possibly know how hard your life has been, how you feel, or who you are because I read Oliver Twist? Does that encapsulate you?" And then Williams told Damon that the only way he could really learn about him is if he opened up and showed him who he was. It's actually a really beautiful scene. I watched it again on YouTube, and I think I watched it 3 times just because it was so beautiful. Um, but I really think it perfectly describes the difference I'm talking about here between knowledge and actual embodiment of an experience. And this is the magic of integration. When understanding is embodied and it becomes more of an experience. When we truly live what we know, this is where transformation happens. And I can personally say without hesitation that the science of mind philosophy saved my life. It just did. As I was writing that, I'm thinking, now I think I know what Christians mean when they say they were saved. When a philosophy speaks to your heart so thoroughly that it changes who you believe you are. And I was living a life that was pure struggle. Lack and limitation were just the predominant features of my life. I felt valueless and disempowered. And I felt as if I was just constantly being tossed on what I thought at the time was just the chance waves of life. And then I walked through the doors of what was then a Church of Religious Science, and I began to listen. I truly began to listen and open my heart. And in my own kind of clumsy way, I began to practice the spiritual principles. And slowly but surely, things began to change. I went from being a victim to being a creator. And I've heard the same story from many of you, many people. When practiced consistently, science of mind is empowering. It is self-empowering and not in an arrogant way, but in a way that is grounded in our oneness with God and the humility of our humanness. I like to say it's an exalted humility. And the more I learned and the more I practiced, the better I felt. And the better my circumstances became. And it wasn't an overnight transformation, it was gradual, as spiritual unfoldment sometimes tends to be, not always. But the more I integrated my knowledge with who I knew myself to be, the more I was able to step into, and this is an ongoing process, I'm not done. The more I step into my own creative agency. One of the gifts that Ernest Holmes gave the world, in my humble opinion, is that he was able to weave the fabric of the science of mind philosophy with both the essence of this profound spiritual mystery that none of us can really know the depth of in our limited human perception. But then he also added a deeply practical way to apply principle through practice. He began by teaching that this is an infinite intelligence, a living presence at the center of all things, and that we're one with it, and that we exist within this creative field of life. And therefore, the qualities of that life, which, we can enumerate: wisdom, love, creativity, abundance, compassion, joy, all these things already exist at the core of our own being. And science of mind is not simply a philosophy to admire intellectually, it is a way of living. It teaches, as Rob said, again, consciousness matters. It's primary, it's creative. All things spring from that. The thoughts we cultivate, the beliefs we reinforce, the stories we repeat, and the emotional atmosphere that we carry with us, they all participate in shaping our experience of life. And not because we control all the external circumstances, but because they guide the way that we meet life, and what becomes possible for us. The brilliance of science of mind is that it invites us to both become spiritually awake and to take personal responsibility. This is the part that some people struggle a little bit with. It encourages us not only to know spiritual truth, but to embody it, to practice it, and ultimately to live from that presence in just the ordinary moments of our everyday life, to live who we truly are, that we are the divine expressing through our humanity. And here's the rub. Here's the and yet, there have been moments in my life where I've done everything by the book, so to speak, when it comes to the spiritual principles and practices that Science of Mind teaches, and I have not gotten results. And so that personal responsibility place had to kick in. I had to dig a little deeper. Because here's what I know: if spiritual principles and creative law are indeed constant and unchangeable and work with mathematical precision, which I believe they do, I intuitively know that's true, then I knew that it had to be something in me that needed to shift if things weren't working out. So I had to know that there was still something in me that wasn't in resonance with the truth of my wholeness, abundance, love, peace, and joy. N- Not that there was anything wrong with me. There was just more to let go of, because if we believe on any level, conscious or unconscious, in lack or limitation, we can't be wealthy. Not because wealth isn't available, but because we've identified with lack. A lonely person can experience love. Not that love isn't available, but because being lonely is their identity. The person who feels like a victim of life cannot express freedom because, as Goddard told us, and I believe this to be true, identity is destiny. We demonstrate who we believe ourselves to be. And as long as we keep being the old us, we'll keep experiencing the old identity that we practiced and conditioned ourselves to be. Because much of the beliefs that linger beneath the conscious mind have been developed over years, decades, and we might not even realize that they're still active within us. But then there's neuroscience, which tells us exactly why this happens, why change can be so challenging. Because when we begin to think and feel different, it feels uncomfortable. It doesn't feel like the identity we've come to know ourselves to be. And as human beings, we don't really like that uncomfortable feeling. It feels uncertain. We would rather be uncomfortable in the known than to live in the unknown, even if the known is not something that we particularly like or want any more of. And intellectually, you may be saying right now, well, that's not true. I do want something different. But our bodies, our familiar conditioned identity may be saying something else. And here's the thing, if we continue to surrender to the old thoughts and feelings that we've had, that we've conditioned to, then we'll end up having exactly the same outcome because every thought we have produces a biochemical reaction in our brain. And then our brain reduces a chemical signal that is transmitted, excuse me, to our body, which means that our thoughts result in a corresponding feeling. Essentially, when we think happy, inspiring, and positive thoughts, our brain begins to manufacture chemicals that make us feel joyful and uplifted and inspired. And of course, the opposite is true as well. I'm not going to enumerate those. But here's the thing, I think just knowing this is empowering, just knowing how this works. Here's where our spiritual practice becomes magic. Our brains don't know the difference between real life and what we imagine or visualize. So we're empowered to draw into our conscious awareness thoughts that reflect what we want to experience and how we want to feel. And we can consciously begin to create a new pattern. And as the new pattern takes hold, the old pattern begins to die off. I forget what it's called in psychology. I think it's extinction. And we literally create a new identity. And again, as Goddard said, our identity is our destiny. And I believe living a meaningful, fulfilled, and joyous life, I believe that's our natural state of being. And if that isn't happening, then we know that there is some form of resistance going on within us. There's some program on our operating system that needs to be deleted. And through our spiritual practices, we're empowered to install a new program, one that's conducive to creating that natural state, which is our natural state of being. We are one with the divine. And not to say that in our humanness, we're not going to have stuff, we are. But we don't have to live there. We're empowered to change that pattern of thinking, feeling, state of being, becoming our identity, and expressing in the world. So I'd like to share something with you that I borrowed from Neville Goddard. I tweaked it a bit. Actually, I tweaked it a lot, but it's his practice. And I thought that I could use this as my closing prayer. So I invite you, if you feel comfortable, to pause, to take a breath. You can close your eyes or soften your gaze. And in that space, I invite you to draw up the feeling of the person you know yourself to be in your oneness with God. Who do you know yourself to be in your oneness with that infinite loving presence? What qualities do you and your Creator share? Feel the unity in that. If God is love, feel how you are united, one in that love. And now I invite you to ask yourself, who is this person who already has all their needs met and all their desires fulfilled? Who are they? Who is this person? See this person clearly. Feel this person. Know this person. And now I invite you to make this declaration with me. I'll say a line and then pause, and you can say it to yourself, or you can say it out loud if you're muted. But make this declaration. I am this person. I am not becoming, not hoping to become. I am this person right now. This is who I am. And now I invite you to feel that shift. Feel yourself dying to the old identity and being born as the new identity. Right now, in this moment. And I invite you to know that from this moment, this is who you are. This is who you know yourself to be. You move as this person. You walk as this person. You think as this person. You are them. You are who you are choosing to be right now. The person who is already the wholeness, the love, the peace, the abundance, the freedom, and the joy of God. And then I'm going to do a little bit more declaring here with me. I am not who I was. I am reborn as my true self. I am the person whose needs and desires are already met. I am wealthy. I am loved. I am healthy. I am free. I am whole. I am blessed. Now, in this moment. This is who I am. And I rest in this truth. And so it is. Take a breath. Ah, this is who we are. So I'm going to invite Elaine. I believe you're doing the sacred giving this morning.
Yes, I am.
I do. I did have the foresight to pull up both of the.
Okay, so ways to give. We can give on Venmo at One Heart, One Mind Center. Look for the photo of Reverend Michelle, or you can send something in the mail to Reverend Michelle. And we really appreciate your giving as we receive so much.
Mm. And the sacred giving affirmation.
Sacred giving. I give with a grateful heart, knowing the Spirit is the source and the substance of all supply. I joyfully participate in the circulation of abundance, and my offering blesses the world and returns to be multiplied. I'm grateful and I'm prosperous, and so it is.
And so it is. Thank you, Elaine. I'll come back to you. Let me give a couple of announcements. Next week, we're going to Om. Om. We're talking about love. I talked to Reverend Suzette. Gisela asked me, I think it was Gisela, or maybe it was Lisa, are we bringing food? If you're coming down, it's always good to bring a snack. I know their first Sunday of the month is always birthday Sunday, so they usually have some food and we can contribute to that. I in the e-newsletter is the link if you are not geographically close and you want to join by Zoom, and I will send out an email the day before just in case that's how you want to join us, and that's always fun too. Let's see what Monday we'll do our prayer. Tuesday, we're talking about, let's see, I forget what the chapter is. I think it's only one because I think it's long, but I don't recall. But I will send out a reminder email. I don't remember right off the top of my head. And then is this week would be the first Wednesday, Relaine. So are you doing your, okay. So there
Yeah.
is the Wednesday morning prayer group this week that meets at 10 a.m. And, if you ever, I said this last week, but just in case you didn't hear, if you ever can't find the link for that Wednesday evening prayer group, it's the same link as our Monday evening prayer group. Prayer, they're coming together. So it's the same link if you just can't find it. It's always just the Monday evening prayer group link. So if you can't find that. Why is there consciousness? Why is there a loving God? Let's talk about that afterwards, Claire. It's a good question, right? I don't know if you guys saw Claire's chat, but she said that Rob asked a question she's always wondered too. Why is there consciousness and why is there a loving God? Why is there air? I don't know. um, So we'll come back to them and we'll have a discussion about that afterwards. But in the meantime, I'm going to come back to Relaine and ask her to do our benediction.
Thank you. Okay, so let's just close our eyes and relax and feel the presence of Spirit. Feel the knowingness of Spirit, the divinity, that beautiful flow of ease and comfort and love. And I'm just so grateful for Rob's sharing this morning, and the music was really wonderful. Um, and Rob sharing, I just know that we're all so unique, and how wonderful is that, and special. And I'm grateful for Reverend Michelle's talk and all the wonderful aspects of all the things she shared. And it's wonderful to include so much Ernest Holmes and Neville Goddard and so much more. So we're so grateful. And I just know that we go forth in this morning, feeling the unity and the oneness and the just the state of being of consciousness where we're all together, supporting one another, loving one another, and being with one another in the blessings of all the goodness of life, all the goodness of spirit. We release this prayer and let it go and know that all is good. And so it is.
So it is. And I'm going to share a video. This is just remember who you are. And since we're talking, I was talking so much about knowing our own divine identity and that's what out pictures. I thought this might be appropriate.
Remember you are love at the heart of your being. Do you remember there is more to this life than what you're seeing? Let me remind you, you are beautiful by far. You've nothing left to prove when you remember who you are. If you ever forget, I will help you remember who you are and who you're here to be. Sometimes it's hard to make a way through the dark, but I will see for you and help you remember who you are. Do you remember there is peace in the middle of this storm? Do you remember you have all you need inside to keep you warm? Let me remind you, you're the dust from a star. Your essence is revealed when you remember who you are. If you ever forget, I will help you remember who you are and who you're here to be. Sometimes it's hard to make a way through the dark, but I will see for you and help you remember. You are stronger than you think you are, braver than you seem. The life that lies ahead of you is like nothing you have ever seen. If you ever forget, I will help you remember who you are and who you're here to be. Sometimes it's hard to make a way through the dark, but I will see for you and help you remember. If you ever forget, I will help you remember who you are and who you're here to be. Sometimes it's hard to make a way through the dark, but I will see for you and help you remember. Remember who you are. Remember who you are.
Remember who you are. I love that. All right, I am going to go ahead and stop our recording.